Hi, I'm Brian Burt, and I lead PwC's U.S. Transfer Pricing and Customs practice, and I'm joined by Andrew Fairfoull, who's a partner at PwC Singapore. We've spent the last couple of weeks meeting with clients across the country, talking about recent developments in the APAC region, and we'd like to summarize some of those key findings for you today. Welcome, Andrew.
Thanks. Great to be here, and thank you for your hospitality over the past 8 days. It's been a whirlwind trip. Loved every minute of it. Great to be back in America.
Excellent, excellent. Well, let's start with the current tax landscape. With Pillar 2 and now the tariff landscape that we see coming in, it's creating a lot of complexities for companies. What impact is that having on companies with principal structures in Asia?
Yeah, it's a good question. We've had a lot of discussion around that. I think the first point to note on this is that if the operational setup still makes sense, then it still makes sense to maintain your presence in either Singapore or Hong Kong, those obviously being the two primary principal territories. One thing we know about tariffs is that it's not going to cause people to withdraw from Asia. So there's still a business need to be in Asia, and there's a business need to have an operational infrastructure around that. So within that context, then, look, there's obviously a squeeze on the tax arbitrage benefits that you can run through your principal structure, coming from obviously the top-up tax on the one side, and then maybe adjustments to the transfer pricing on the other as a response to tariffs. So maybe there's not as much juice in the system as there used to be, but 15% as a tax rate is still a pretty good arbitrage in Asia Pacific. So the average rate on post distribution earnings would be about 30% across the regions. 15% is still doing pretty well. And incentives are still available to those that can make use of incentives. They are still available, and we now have in Singapore the refundable tax credit incentive, which for some groups is proving of interest.
Oh, that's great. Thanks. I guess maybe focusing on China for a second.
Yeah.
So we've heard a lot about decoupling from China and supply chain changes and diversification that's becoming more of a reality for our clients. What do clients need to think about from a tax perspective when they're looking at their businesses decouple from China? Yeah.
So the main concern really on China decoupling is what you do with the decoupled China business. So China for China has been the mantra for a while. China plus one, perhaps these days. But knowing how you're going to deal with your profitability in China, it's never been the easiest place to extract profits from. That's front and center. So over the past couple of sessions, we've been having a number of discussions around that. So look, China still offers incentives. So for those groups that have got non-sensitive IP, maybe it's older, sort of first generation type IP, moving that IP into China to establish a self-standing decoupled China business will get you a 15% incentive, very often through the high-tech incentive that's on offer. There are still locational incentives for businesses that are willing to invest, away from the eastern seaboard. That's still something of interest. You still got to get the cash out at the end of all of that, even if you've got a low rate. So unbundling of services is a key topic that people look at. We always have issues in China. You always come up against a bar at some point. But the message is be patient, think broadly, and oftentimes there will be solutions.
And think about that segmentation between the China business and the global business.
For sure. Yeah.
Interesting. One other issue that's come up in the conversations with clients over the last 2 weeks is around value-based fees. What are we seeing around companies adopting value-based fees?
Yeah, so a lot. So value-based fees have been sort of flavor of the month for a while now from a direct tax perspective. And again, obviously with tariffs, that value-based fees play a significant role in the whole unbundling debate. There's a growing amount of success in Asia Pacific around defending value-based fee structures. So if you just take a couple of examples, India, we've had success in putting in place variable royalty structures and residual profit sweep structures. The Indian tax authority is willing to apply a TNMM lens and therefore just accept that there is a residual profit that needs to go somewhere. And you pick a mechanism. There might be a characterization question about is that a royalty or is it something else? But that's something that we've had success with in India. Other territories, Indonesia, Malaysia, also seen successes. China, again, a little bit more difficult. So in China, the chances of getting the SAT to to apply a TNMM lens to an outbound value-based fee are quite limited. They'll get hung up on comparables and cuts, and that normally then puts a lid on what you're able to achieve from a China perspective. But with the exception of China, pretty good outcomes.
Okay, great. And maybe we'll wrap it up by just talking a little bit about defense. So keeping all of these issues in mind, how are companies thinking about defending these policies and these structures going forward in the APAC region?
Yeah, so I mean, the critical thing is to have a strategy. So we'd refer to it as a tax authority engagement strategy. Now, that might involve selective use of APAs. It might involve file and defend in certain territories. It might involve other forms of advanced ruling. But you've really got to have a view across the region as to which of those levers you want to pull in which territories and in which order. So there's that strategic overlay that's really important. Beneath that, local is so important. So there are nuances in each of the territories. You know, they may be geographically close. Some of them may be culturally similar. Right. But the way the tax authorities operate is very different. So absolutely critical to, you know, once you've defined your strategy, to really understand, you know, what is the local nuance? Is it about people and relationships? Is it about a way of thinking? Is it about a particular, you know, technical point of difference between a UN view and an OECD view? So all of that becomes really critical.
Interesting. And then also, I guess, telling a consistent story across these jurisdictions around value drivers, et cetera.
Single source of truth is really important. Yeah.
Right. Excellent. Well, thank you very much for the time today. Thanks for recapping these discussions we've been having with clients. And it's great to see you in New York.
Thanks. Great to be here.